Hey everyone, and welcome to today's episode of Piano TV. I am Allysia, your host, and today I have another more conversational type of video to share with you guys today. I wanted to talk to you about how to find a piano teacher, and maybe more specifically even, how to find a good piano teacher. I've had some of you email me recently, and even in the past, telling me your kind of like music teacher horror stories, teachers who will like talk on the phone in the lessons, or who are just like really rude or belligerent, or maybe even not even so dramatically bad, just maybe even like on a lighter level, just not having like a sense of direction, not giving you like really clear actionable feedback, that kind of thing. So I haven't done a video like this on my channel before, but I don't have like the ultimate answer for finding a piano teacher. What I'm going to recommend to you today are the things that I've done, both to find teachers and to put myself out there as a teacher. And ultimately, like if I were to distill, if you don't want to watch the rest of this video and you just want like a little tiny piece of wisdom, wisdom, what do I know? My one little kernel of wisdom would be that finding a piano teacher is kind of like a vibe thing. It's an emotional thing. You get a sense of if you get on with someone like pretty quickly. And that's why I always recommend doing face-to-face meetings before taking lessons, because it's pretty easy to get a sense of like if you like someone, and that's going to be one of the most important parts. You want to like them. But beyond liking them as a person, there has to be like some sort of connection. I don't know, like emotionally, I don't know, like what I've noticed over the years is that, not to get too much into it before we actually start, but I've had students who work really well with me and struggle with other teachers, but also vice versa, people who kind of struggle with me but work really well with other teachers. So some people need like a stricter, firmer hand. Some people need a lot of leniency and freedom. Some people need like a very clear step-by-step approach. Some people hate step-by-step approaches and just kind of want to go with the flow. So part of it is dependent on what kind of person you are. And that's why there are so many different types of piano teachers and so many different types of successful piano teachers, because ultimately we're all different too. So you're going to be gravitating towards different teachers. Not everyone would work well with me. Not everyone would work well with, another teacher. So that's just something to keep in mind. A lot of it is just really an intuitive decision. But anyway, kind of already started getting into it, but let's continue getting into it. So the first thing I would suggest is look at the teacher databases for whatever music school that you are a part of. So for example, some of you study through the RCM. I've done videos on these. Some of you have, if you don't know what I'm talking about, some of you study through the ABRSM. And I can't speak to the ABRSM just because I'm not as familiar with it, but I know for sure the RCM has like a database of teachers who use the RCM, and that's a good starting point. I've been on their list. I don't think I'm on their list anymore. I actually think they changed things. You have to like become a member, and since having a baby, I haven't renewed my membership with them. But that would be like one place to look. And another organization type thing you might want to look into is in Canada, each of our provinces have their own like provincial music teachers association. So when I lived in Ontario, it was ORMTA, ORMTA. I think it was Ontario Registered Music Teachers Association. And then CERMTA, which was Saskatchewan, which is where I am now. But there's also a national one, like a Canadian Music Teachers Association. And I know that there's an American one as well, which I believe is NMTA. I might be getting that a little bit wrong. But again, you have to pay a membership to participate in these. It's like an annual fee. And the reason that I would suggest looking there is because if you have teachers who are like paying an annual fee to be in an organization, they're generally going to be more serious than just like random Betsy off the street. So Betsy, I don't know why that was the name. So that might be like a good starting point, because you're gonna just weed out a lot of people who might not like, who are maybe just more on like a casual level, I suppose. The other thing about having a teacher that's a part of a recognized organization is that those teachers then have access to resources like for recitals. So when I was a part of ORMTA, we got together for conventions. There were like annual recitals and music festivals and stuff. And that's actually another suggestion. This is more like when you're vetting a piano teacher. If they regularly host recitals or put their students into music festivals, regardless of whether or not they're for children or not, I would take that as a good sign. It's teachers, not every teacher is going to put their students in recitals and stuff like that, but again, it's just kind of like that extra level of effort that to me shows that a music teacher is serious and committed. And I think recitals are just a necessary part of learning how to play the piano for kids and adults alike. Adults tend to consider it a little bit more optionally, but playing in recitals is one of the most useful things when you're learning how to play the piano, because performing is different from practicing, and you learn different skills when you learn how to perform. So a serious teacher is probably going to be listed in one of these organization databases, and they're also probably going to be putting on recitals and stuff at least a couple times a year. So those are some things I would look for. Now, all of that said, when I was starting out as a piano teacher, I wasn't a part of a database for like the first 5 years. And I got all of my students because I worked at a music academy. And that's another route that you can go. You're probably, depending on where you live, there may or may not be academies, which is basically just like a school that has a variety of piano teachers. They're not just like, it's not just like a one man or one woman operation. So depending on the school, these can be a really good way to go too, because they tend to like standardize their teachers a little bit more. It can be hit or miss. So one thing with these schools is you might come across the eager youngsters who were just starting out. And that's what I was when I started out. I was like that eager 20-year-old. So again, that can be kind of like a hit or miss thing, but it's often reflected in the price. My rates were quite low when I started. I believe they were like around $40 an hour. So, yeah, it just depends on the music school, like on the academy, but that can be another way to find people. When I started out in Ontario, I started out by just kind of striking off on my own, and I drove to people's houses. And how I got my name out there, actually, like how I got my first probably 10 students was actually through Kijiji, which is like the Canadian version of Craigslist. I tried using Craigslist and I didn't have any success really. I maybe got like one student from Craigslist, but I think that's more of like a Canadian thing because more Canadians use Kijiji. But that could be, especially if you live in a larger center, that could actually be a pretty good way to find a teacher, because that's where you're going to find people who maybe are like a little more outside the box. If you don't want to go like when you get a teacher in these like organizations like the RCM or MTNA or whatever, they tend to be more, I don't know. There's a very specific type of teaching that they do for the most part. It's like you go classical, or like maybe you do a little bit of pop, but it's kind of like one specific learning path for the most part. You might get like some teachers who do Suzuki and stuff who are also part of these organizations, but for the most part, it's like one type of, like you kind of know what to expect. Whereas if you want like maybe outside of the box jazz lessons or things that are a little bit different, you might not necessarily find that through like an organization. So that's where something like Kijiji would be your friend, because you'll be able to find these teachers who do different things. Now, the downside to that, of course, is that like on Kijiji or Craigslist, there's like all kinds of people. So if you have someone who's like super low, cheap piano lessons, $5, inquire now, then like don't inquire now. What I would look for, and this is one thing that I made sure of when I was placing ads for other people to find me, look for people who are totally transparent right out of the gates. People who tell you what you're going to get, people who tell you the price, anyone who's kind of like, who gives you just like a sentence or two of information. I wouldn't, it's like, why don't they tell you more? Like, they're probably just using that as like a manipulation tactic for you to message them, and then they can, I don't know. To me, it just seems weird. So like, look for people who are like forthright about the services they provide right out of the gate. And one thing that you want to, and this is again, like kind of a tip for vetting a piano teacher. You want someone who's going to be really organized. So if you message someone and they're like, yeah, cool, I could take you on as a student, then you're like, okay, well, like, do we meet? Like, what do we do? If you're in the position of having to kind of like organize everything and arrange everything, I would take that as a red flag too. The piano teacher should walk you through everything without having to make you make all the decisions. So when I'm setting things up with my students, they get in touch with me. It's like, cool, let's schedule a time to meet so that we can, see if we get along as humans, and then you can learn more about my teaching and stuff like that. Let's set up a time. So if you want your piano teacher to be taking the initiative, because it's not your job to plan everything, it's their job. So that's something I would look for. And also, you definitely want to meet with someone before. If they don't offer a meeting and just like jump straight to the lessons and charge you for it, then I honestly, like, I would pass on them, because having a meeting is so important. Again, going back to like making those intuitive snap judgments, whether or not you get on with someone, you kind of need to meet with someone in person to see if that's the case. So definitely that would be a recommendation. Meet with someone beforehand. If they don't offer that, look for someone else. The other two ways that I would recommend finding piano teachers would be through word of mouth. Word of mouth is probably one of the best ways. And most of my students have actually come through word of mouth. Especially when I was in Toronto and I did like my Kijiji blast. I think like my first 10 students were from Kijiji or Craigslist, and then the other, like, I don't know, 10 just came from recommendations and word of mouth. So ask people like, do you know any teachers in the area? Do you like any teachers in the area? Search around. One good place that you could look is local music stores. So in town here, we have a music store, and they're always like connected to who's teaching and who's not, and who's on maternity leave and all that stuff. They're like in the know with music teachers, and they have like a big list of all the music teachers and their numbers and stuff like that. Now, I'm not saying every town is going to have this, but music stores do tend to be pretty well connected to like the happenings of the community. So that could be an area for you to try. And then there are flyers. Now, when I posted flyers in Toronto, they did absolutely nothing. It was totally useless. So it just depends where you live. But in this small town, I posted flyers at like the local grocery store, and that was like how I got all my students to start. It was crazy. I wasn't expecting it to work, and it was just like, I guess people really like flyers here. So keep your eyes out for flyers, especially if you live in like a smaller community, like grocery store, library. Look at postings there to see if anything comes up. And again, like people who advertise their services on things like flyers and Kijiji and stuff like that might not be vetted. They might not be a part of an organization. So that's then going to be your job to just kind of make sure they are what you want them to be as a piano teacher. So one thing, when I have meetings with potential students, I'll get them to bring their books and play something for me. And this isn't so I could like judge them or see if they're worthy as a student or anything like that, but it's more to get a sense of where they're at, their level, what they've been working on, if there's like any immediate things I could give them advice on. And I think a lot of piano teachers do this. It's a way to kind of figure out how to structure the upcoming lessons. So definitely see if they do that. If they don't get you to play for them, I would maybe like question why. Like that might not necessarily be a red flag, but if they want to meet you, but they don't want to hear you play before they start planning your lessons, that's kind of weird to me. So that's another thing to look for. And I've already talked lots about vibe. I don't need to keep getting into that. It's important that it's not your piano teacher's job to make your goals for you. A piano teacher can help you with your goals, but if you don't have an idea of what you're working towards or what you want to achieve, it's going to be hard for the piano teacher, because they're just going to have to like kind of guess, and they'll put you through like, standard method series or what they think is right, but it's important for you to know what you want. So do you want to be able to play like this one specific piece? Do you want to go through the grades, do exams? Like, do you want to learn how to play lead sheets really well? Like whatever it is, be really clear on what you want and make sure you communicate that to them. It's not, some piano teachers are more structured than others, but it's ultimately up to you. Now what they should then do with that, if they know your goals, they should be able to point you in the right direction, give you music that you might not have found on your own. Obviously they should be giving you useful feedback on a weekly basis. But again, it's not necessarily up to the piano teacher to make goals for you. So if you're finding that you don't have a lot of direction in your piano lessons, that might just be because you don't have clear goals. And sometimes when you're learning an instrument, it's hard to have clear goals because you don't know what you don't know. You know what I mean? So, but you could still say, like, I want to be able to play like this. Help me figure out how to play like this. And then as you learn, you'll get better and better. And then you'll be able to kind of clarify your goals further because you'll understand the instrument a little bit more. Yeah, so ultimately, like, a good teacher should inspire you. And I think this is the most important part. If you're paying for someone to mentor you on a weekly basis, then that every week you see them should be like a fresh jolt of inspiration. If it's not, if you find it like really like, I gotta go to piano lessons again, and like you dread it and you don't get like good feelings when you're there, it's not worth it. Like half the point of taking piano lessons, like obviously you take piano lessons to get better, but you also take piano lessons to stay motivated, to keep your energy level up. So that would be one of the most important qualities of a good piano teacher is are they someone who's inspiring you on a weekly basis? Now, I already said this too, a good piano teacher is going to expose you to a wide range of music that you wouldn't have necessarily found otherwise. As a student, it's not your job to know like all the repertoire out there that you should be learning. That's the piano teacher's job. So that's something to look for. They can help you with exams. Like a good teacher will know how to put you through an examination if that's what you want to do. And of course, yeah, you want a piano teacher who's not just like spending the entire lesson chatting or like not giving you useful advice. I've actually seen piano teachers who spend more of the lesson playing themselves than letting the students play, and I think that's crazy too. You want it's not about them, right? It's about you. You're learning. So make sure that you can kind of tell like if there's an ego thing going on with a teacher as well. So if there's an ego thing, I might not recommend them as a teacher. And yeah, like I said before, different people need different things with a teacher. So I might benefit from someone who's really easygoing, but you might benefit from someone who's like pretty strict and disciplinary, and someone who might like give you the stink eye if you don't practice for a week. So it depends. And some of us really like highly technical lessons, like the Russian School of Music, where it's like lots of exercises and stuff like that. And some of us just want to like jam out to music that we like. So it's just try out different teachers. Don't feel bad about it. I've had students who leave me for other teachers, and I know they feel guilty about it because they feel like they're letting me down or like they're hurting my feelings or whatever. But honestly, like I would rather see someone effectively learn an instrument than to just like keep taking lessons with me out of a sense of duty or guilt or something like that. So feel free to, when you're looking for a piano teacher, if you have the luxury to try out a few different piano teachers, I would do that. I would maybe take like 1 or 2 lessons with a few different people, see how it goes, and you might even find that one teacher's great for a year or 2, but then you need like a fresh approach and try a different teacher. Then that's okay. Some of us have had the same teacher for like a decade, and that's cool. Some of us might benefit from switching it up, or even like maybe you have a classical teacher here and a jazz teacher here if you start getting really into it or something. Don't feel like you have to just like pick one person and commit to them forever. We understand. A good piano teacher, I would hope, understands. We want you to have like a great experience learning an instrument, and if we're not like the ultimate end goal, if we're not going to be able to help you ultimately, then we want you to find someone who will. So just hopefully this gives you a little bit of help. Some of it was just kind of like maybe me rambling a little bit, but hopefully there were some things that maybe gave you ideas. I know it's hard because not everyone has access to a community that has piano teachers. Like some of you live in really small places where maybe there's only like one local teacher. I know where I live, there are several teachers, but they're really in demand. They're really good. So it's very difficult to get piano lessons with them because they're really awesome. So that, like, I know that I'm not going to be able to help you solve those problems. This is something I haven't, maybe this will be another video, but there are online teachers and they kind of fill that gap if you can't find someone locally. And I've been talking to a lot of these teachers who do private lessons online, and they're really awesome people. But having not ever taken or given an online lesson, I'm not quite at the level where I'm comfortable recommending them. But I can tell you that a lot of people who I talk to love their music lessons and really enjoy their online lessons. So anyway, I'm going to leave it there. Hopefully this was helpful. I will catch up with you guys in the next video. Thank you so much for watching. Bye. Wisdom. What do I know? But the idea is, oh, I lost my train of thought.